Hi there, welcome to the Tour Guides Travel Guides. My name's Rich Jones, professional tour guide. Trust me, you know it makes sense. Welcome to Bath, also known as Bath Spa. Certainly one of Britain's most beautiful cities, nestling here in the southwest corner of this area of outstanding natural beauty called the Cotswolds. So beautiful and important, designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1987. Okay, well, let's start the tour. This is probably the logical place to start and essentially finish, but we're here in Abbey churchyard, right in front of the Tourist Information Centre for all your visitor inquiries, right here in the courtyard. Also, alongside the magnificent, the remarkable 15th century Bath Abbey, more of that later, but just really glowing in the sunlight there, this beautiful oolitic limestone. And of course, the world famous Roman baths, discovered at the end of the 19th century, and now a top visitor attraction in Britain. And we'll be in there having a look-see in a little while. Okay, so I think the plan for us now is we're going to just head on down into Church Street, off the corner, off the courtyard, and then get into Abbey Green. So let's go. Okay, so here we are, Abbey Green, this quiet little corner just off the main churchyard. We've got a nice view of the Abbey right behind us there, but a nice little oasis, peace and tranquility at this time of year, I have to say. Lovely old plane tree here, several hundred years old, and just on the other side of the square you've got the Crystal Palace pub and restaurant, which is very, very popular, pretty good. Relatively reasonably priced for the centre of Bath anyway, let's go. Alright, so we've moved off Abbey Green into North Parade Passage, but I wanted to stop here to show you this actually. Sally Lunn's eating house since 1680. There's actually been a house here since the 15th century, 1482, said to be Bath's oldest house, but world famous for you can see in the window there, Greg, actually, these Bath Sally Lunn buns, very famous indeed. Okay, so out of North Parade Passage, actually onto North Parade itself, but this is just a little location finder for you. We're here at what's called Bog Island, so called because once upon a time, before the town was really expanded out, this was a marshy bog down by the banks of the River Avon, which we'll be seeing later. But again, a bit for your information, if you did actually come here on one of these scheduled tours, this is a kind of central drop-off pickup location for the tour buses coming in and out of town during the summer months. It gets kind of busy around here. But also while we're here, I want to point out across the ways there, if Greg can get that in focus, is this massive structure which was once upon a time the Empire Hotel. It was actually used by the Admiralty during World War II as their HQ outside of London. There was a bombing raid here April 1942. That was actually the target, but they missed and they devastated a lot of central parts of the city, which I'll be showing you later on. But it's quite interesting looking at that at the top of the three distinct architectural styles on the roofline, like a castle turret on the right hand side, almost like a Dutch gable on the top, and on the left hand side it's almost Central European. In fact, they've replicated it on the other side. So that's was the Empire Hotel. It's now sort of shops and restaurants and things like that here at Bog Island. Okay, so before we continue on with the tour proper, I wanted to bring you guys down here because if you want the ultimate shot of one of Bath's most iconic landmarks, the Pulteney Bridge, it's from this point here on North Bridge, just off Bog Island. Panning around, we're going to see the lovely North Parade Gardens down below there. Now, there is a charge during the height of the season to actually get in there, unless you can prove you're a resident, and to get in for free. And continuing across, views of the River Avon, one of the 6 River Avons in the United Kingdom. Avon comes from the Celtic word afon, meaning quite literally river, so looking at the river there. Further up you'll see the in full swing the Pulteney Weir, and then just above it you'll see the Pulteney Bridge herself, which we'll be getting up close and personal with a little further along in the tour. But fine views of Bath sitting and nestling here down in the Avon Valley. Now this is pretty important. You've got to see from the plaque there, it says King Edgar, first king of all England, was crowned by Dunstan, Archbishop of Canterbury, in the Saxon Abbey on this site, Whit Sunday AD 973. Right here, 973, the church right here, the first king of all England, the emergence of all the Saxon kingdoms coming together under one man, King Edgar. Now, before we continue with the tour, I just want to tell you a little story to just kind of cement a few little ideas. That we've been talking about Romans, we've been talking about Celts, we've been talking about Saxons. Well, you know, who were these people? Well, essentially, in running order of the population, the peoples of Britain, we go right back to the very beginning. We're talking about the ancient Britons, okay? And then eventually, the next lot of people to come into these islands were the Celts. Now, the Celts, a lot of people assume they're kind of from Scotland and Ireland and places like that, but no, originally Celts come from South Central Europe, kind of the former Yugoslavia, Croatia, Slovenia, Slovakia, that sort of area. And the reason they ended up here in Northern Europe, and particularly in the islands, is because of the Romans. As that mighty Roman Empire expanded, so the Celts got forced further and further afield. They couldn't compete militarily with them and refused to be absorbed into their society, so they got pushed further afield, right to the extreme edges. So of course, by AD 43, this massive date in British history when the Romans arrive here, so of course the Celts have pushed further and further and further afield to the extreme edges of that northern western bit of the Roman Empire, and ended up where you kind of expect to find them: north of Scotland, West Wales, Ireland, Cornwall. In fact, if you can go further afield, right to the extreme edges in Europe, for example, Brittany and France, and northwestern Spain, Galicia, all Celtic people. So if you hear the expression, something called the Celtic fringe, quite literally the fringe of the Roman Empire. So AD 43, we've got the Romans now in complete control. They stayed here till accepted date is around about 410 AD, when they went back, abandoned us to go and protect their crumbling Roman Empire. And of course, now it became open season, so of course the major European tribes that had heard the wealth and prosperity of this fertile little island, not only crops but minerals as well, so we'll have some of that. And so when they came, again, guys I guess you've probably heard of, for example, the Danes, the Vikings, the Jutes, the Angles and the Saxons. And of course, after many centuries of power struggle, it was the Angles and the Saxons that came out on top. We became Anglo-Saxon until that second enormously important date in British history, 1066. Of course, the last Anglo-Saxon king was killed by William the Conqueror of the French, and then we became Norman French-speaking dynasty. So just to cement that, that's where we became sort of kind of a mongrel race, I think you could probably best describe us at. Now here's a nice little statue for you just off the churchyard here. See this here? Water is best. Nice statuette. Installed in the 1860s by the Bath Temperance Movement. My word, they were a lot of fun, weren't they? But another little add-on here, 1986 I think it says, but you can see in here, there used to be a drinking fountain here. It doesn't work no more, don't think. No, it doesn't work no more. A little drunken angel in there, so stay sober, drink the waters of Bath. Now, before we move off, come and have a look at this, over here. Little piggy. Part of the great exhibition that was here a few years ago now, the pig parade. A lot of these are commissioned by various different businesses, and at the end of the parade sold off to charity. Good things, pigs. Legend of the pigs in Bath is because allegedly the founding of this place, as the story goes, is that there was a prince called Bladud, and he contracted a very nasty skin disease, probably leprosy, so he was banished from the kingdom, and he was given a herd of pigs, so he became a swineherd, and came around here. He noticed there was a mud pit that his pigs used to love to get into. It was this warm mud, and of course they came out and the skin was lovely and soft. He said, well, might be good for me, so of course he jumped in, got himself all muddy, came out, and of course he was cured, came back, was welcomed back with open arms and married the beautiful princess, and they all lived happily ever after. That's the legend of Bladud and the founding of Bath. Also apparently Bladud became the father of King Lear. Whatever. Let's go. Now, before the big red open top bus comes along again and blocks our view again, just want to get a great shot there of the Guildhall and the covered markets we'll be going through. But again, this really classical architectural style that we're really getting into shortly, but really became the fashion, particularly in the 18th century, down here just off Orange Grove. So we're going to head off the beautiful stuccoed entrance over there into the covered markets. So down by the waterside now, and this gives us a really great view of the famous Pulteney Bridge. You see the windows there, little shops and cafes and tea rooms and stuff in like it, but again, built in the 18th century. Now the story behind it is the great Andrea Palladio, or Palladio, this Palladian style of architecture, which we're really going to get into this next stage of the tour. This apparently was the blueprint for the original plans for the Ponte Vecchio in Italy. They were turned down. Somebody kept those blueprints and it was brought here. So this is actually the original design by Antonio Palladio, the Pulteney Bridge. You say probably one of the most iconic images here in the city of Bath. Look, spanning the River Avon, and you can see the mighty waters cascading down Pulteney Weir there, and those great sort of promenades, walkways on the other side, now actually closed to the public, and plans for restoration refurbishment underway as we speak. So the Pulteney Bridge, the base of Great Pulteney Street. So back off Pulteney Bridge, we're now down here at Laura Place at the town end of this Great Pulteney Street, Bath's grandest street, and if you want my opinion, Britain's grandest street, laid out in the 1780s by a man called William Pulteney, a huge landowner around here. In fact, Laura Place, we're here, named after one of his daughters. Wide at the far end, we can just pick up now the Holburne Museum. Once upon a time, the leading hotel back in the day was once known as the Sydney Hotel, and we're going to be heading up that way shortly. Now then, have a look at this. We've come up to the top end of Great Pulteney Street. We find ourselves outside the beautiful Holburne Museum. Art gallery, exhibition centre, cafes, restrooms, gift shops, beautiful, newly refurbished. Formerly though, the Sydney Hotel. Again, back in the day, the 18th and early 19th century, this is where the rich and famous would stay. It was the top hotel back in the day. Just across the road over there, you might be able to make out number 4 Sydney Place. You see 1, 2, 3 the blue door, 4 the white door. Now in there lived Jane Austen. She was here for about 7 years. Quite a shy, demure girl, a parson's daughter. She didn't get out much really, but she was particularly shocked by the shenanigans and the goings on in this hotel, because people rich and famous were coming in and coming out with people they probably shouldn't have been going in and out with, if you know what I'm saying. So poor old Jane was like, shock, horror. In fact, 2 of her novels were greatly inspired by what was going on in and around the city of Bath back in the day. I'm talking about Northanger Abbey and Persuasion's the other one actually. So Jane Austen, here, shock, horror, the goings on at the Sydney Hotel. So turning left off Gay Street into Queen's Parade Place, and adjacent to the entrance to the Royal Victoria Park, Royal Avenue. The park was laid out in the 1820s, named after a certain Princess Victoria, later to become the great Queen Victoria herself. But the reason we're coming this way is to head on up to see, quite simply, Bath's grandest address, the Crescent. Progressing through the park, we just passed the Pavilion Cafe a little ways down there on the right hand side. In fact, you might want to pop in and have a cup of tea. They've got some great views over the city from there, and if you are a patron, they would be happy to give you a little token for the very clean bathrooms they've got in there. But stopping here by the open top bus stop in the Royal Park, Royal Victoria Park, this is where we're going to go turn right to see, for you, the money shot, probably one of the greatest views in Bath. Let's go. Well, here we are, Bath's most exclusive address, the Royal Crescent. Lit up now, the sun's actually coming out, which is fantastic to see it illuminated. Laid out in the 1760s by John Wood the Younger, obviously the son of John Wood, the original builder here. Really classic example of Palladian architecture. If you do want to see how the other half lived back in the 18th and early 19th century, actually number 1 here was once the house of a man called Thomas Brock. Brock Street we'll be heading down to very shortly, but it's now a museum to show exactly how the homes would have been set up in the 18th century. You'll see the little wall in front of it. We just pan slightly left. There's a raised bank and ditch just the other side of that, was to keep out animals and ne'er-do-wells and foreigners of an unsavoury character back in the day. Quite right too. The Royal Crescent. It's another jewel in the crown here. This is the Circus that was laid out in the 1750s by John Wood the Elder again. It's actually his final masterpiece, really. Sadly, he died in 1754, just before it was actually completed, and his son John Wood the Younger finished it off before he went on to create the Crescent, which we just saw. But just absolutely classic. 3 identical crescents forming a perfect circle of inward-facing apartment buildings. John Wood the Elder actually had a fascination for prehistory, and particularly ancient stone circles, and the dimension of the circus here exactly the same size as the earthworks at Stonehenge. Remarkable story. And looking at some of the architecture here, we'll see the 3 styles of classical columns. You've got Doric at the bottom, Ionic in the middle, and Corinthian at the top. Probably notice at the very top of the building there, you also notice these huge stone acorns. That hints back to the legend of Prince Bladud and his pigs, obviously the acorns being favourite pig food. Now if we're coming down a little bit, look above the doorway. I think Greg may be able to focus in. You'll be able to see some quite intricate friezes above the doorway. They represent the achievements of the day in the 18th century, but also there are certain Masonic implications involved in that as well. But exclusive impartments indeed, but really classical Palladian architecture inspired by John Wood the Elder and John Wood the Younger. Now we're going to head on up towards the assembly rooms. We're going to shoot down Bennett Street off the Circus here. So off Bennett Street we find ourselves outside the assembly rooms, and as the name suggests, this is where people came to assemble, to dance, to take tea, to catch up on the social issues of the day. And it was actually here that Richard Bonash became Master of Ceremonies and to reorganise the social etiquette of the day. Richard Bonash, incidentally, became the unofficial King of Bath. He was an interesting character. He arrived here in 1703. He was disgraced from the army. He was a gambler, complete dandy. But he became a very, very important man, the King of Bath, and it was here that things like leave your swords at the door, gentlemen, absolutely no duelling, and the carriages arrive at 8 o'clock. So that was all happening here in the assembly rooms. Now today, it's a very fine costume museum indeed. It's well worth a visit, actually. Actually, the rooms in there are absolutely spectacular. You really do get a feel for high society in the 18th and 19th century. So assembly rooms right here, just off Bennett Street.